Some may find the following disturbing. Discretion is advised.
Never before in the history of sports podcasts have two men brought you opinion and analysis like these two. They speak for a city that's desperate for wins and titles, not whining and travesty. You might not agree with what they have to say, but you'll defend their right to say it. Sports fans across the world, from Chicago, Illinois, this is the Mac and Reed Show.
Hello, everybody. Welcome into another edition of the Mac and Reed Show right here on the Barroom Network. We are streaming live on YouTube. If you want to watch us and chat with us, feel free to chime in. I know the Barflies will be talking about a lot with us today, mostly Bears on the show. Remember, you can follow us on Twitter. Follow me at the Real Evan Mac. Follow Ross at Ross Reed. And remember, the audio-only versions are on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Remember to like, subscribe. Tell a friend or two. A lot to get to on the show today as news keeps breaking. Bears making a lot of waves, man. They're really just hitting this offseason at full throttle, it feels like. So we'll be diving into the trade that tipped it off, as well as Rostradamus predicted, as they made that trade before free agency had even begun, and then adding several players. And we'll dive into each of those individual additions at length. A lot to talk about. And, you know, the icing on the cake is maybe number 12 from Green Bay is about to get the fuck out of Green Bay and finally out of the division and go on to play with the New York Jets. We'll see what the latest is with that and the rest of NFL free agency, any big splashes. And of course, the madness is going on right now. Won't talk about that too much because it's going on as what it's Auburn and Iowa going on behind me. And we saw already some big upsets today, and it's only day one, and we'll go over our picks still and a lot to get to as far as the Oscars are concerned. The recap goes. I was 3 for 3 with my lone predictions, as I didn't see any of these damn movies, but we'll dive into a ton. Ross, how you doing, man?
I'm good. Feeling good. We got, as we were literally going on air, Robert Tonyan is now a backup tight end for the Chicago Bears on a one-year deal. He has 17 career touchdowns, if I'm not mistaken, off the top of my head. And another local kid, as Ryan Poles continues to dip into that market. McHenry County's own Robert Tonyan will now back up. Of course, another Chicagoland area guy in Cole Kmet.
Isn't that wild? Robert Tonyan made some waves for Green Bay, and yeah, it looks like he's had just about 17 touchdowns, as Ross said. Look at him. Look at him go. Boom, right on the money. So we begin with the Bears tipping it all off last Friday. It was pretty unbelievable. But we knew that the Bears were going to trade this pick, and they'd been fielding calls. We didn't know who the suitor would be for number 1 overall pick. But that first big move, as Ross predicted, trading back, was trading it to Carolina for a king's ransom. I think we could both agree they got a really great haul for giving up that number 1 overall pick. So they moved back to 9 overall. And then you get the Panthers' second-round pick, which is the 61st pick this year. You get a first-round pick in 2024, second-round pick in 2025, and the Bears immediately get an established wide receiver from Carolina in DJ Moore, who, despite a lot of inconsistency at quarterback, he's been very productive. So you can only imagine what he will add to a wide receiver room with Chase Claypool and Darnell Mooney already, helping Justin Fields out. So it's going to be a great offseason as they get to work. He's a 1,000-yard receiver instantly, you would think, and he's still young at 25. He's got that big play capability. Even before we talk about the free agents on top of that, Ross, that are now signing to the Bears as we have spoken today, how did you feel when you saw that this news broke about the Carolina trade?
I loved it. I thought it was an absolutely brilliant trade from Ryan Poles. We talked about it last week. I felt like the trade was going to happen before free agency because I thought that Poles was going to want to get a veteran back in this trade. I thought that he would go wide receiver or defensive lineman. He brought in one of the best wide receivers that he could on the trade market right now. And most importantly, DJ Moore carries like about a $25 million cap hit. When you see these guys on the market right now getting the big name free agents getting $35-40 million a year at the wide receiver position, to be able to have him and now Darnell Mooney, which they'll look to extend, and possibly, Chase Claypool, we'll see what happens with him this year. You have those guys as a trio at a very low rate compared to what the market is dictating right now. That's just a home run for Ryan Poles right there. And then you can fall back at this point to the 9th overall pick, where you've got some flexibility. Paris Johnson, the offensive tackle from Ohio State, is going to be an option for you. I think so is Jackson Smith in Jigma. If you want to really go offense and add another name, if you don't feel good about Chase Claypool, we know Van Ness from Purdue is an option. Skoronski, they were at the pro day the other day for Northwestern, is a very solid interior lineman. But also, I would not be surprised if the Bears traded down again from 9 into the teens to recoup even more draft capital. And don't sleep on them getting a cornerback as well, like Witherspoon from Illinois. So there's a lot of options on the board right now. You can go best player available. If you want to trade down again, you can. But this was all about, number one, getting a potential number one wide receiver. We've been talking about this for over a year now. Justin Fields needed a potential wide receiver. And you see DJ Moore had plumbers throwing to him. No disrespect to those guys. PJ Walker's now on this team. He was one of those guys throwing to him. But for him to be able to put up those numbers and, well over 1,000 yards, he stays durable. He's consistent. He's a home run hitter down the field. That is a great trade that Ryan Poles made. And hats off to him for being able to do that. And he did it well before the draft. And so now, the rest, all the noise can go to sleep about, Fields and he's the guy, is he not the guy, or this and that. And you see those guys at the Bulls game last night already trying, having that camaraderie and stuff like that. Home run trade for him, and it just kind of led them into free agency, which they made some other very interesting, intriguing moves as well.
Double-digit picks this year and into next year building, and all these contracts that we'll get to too are all these few years. So you think that the turnaround is going to be pretty impressive. But going back to DJ Moore, you can't speak enough about him and what he brings to the table and that wide receiver room. And he said, quote, "I think everybody's level could reach a new level here now that I'm here. I was talking to Mooney. We were talking about being together with Chase, me and him, how it's going to elevate the offense and elevate Justin at the same time. Because I'm not here just to be like just a bright light. I'm here to just make everybody around me better. And we just want to try to go get some wins." And it's night and day, you would think. Chase Claypool only played a limited season last year. Darnell Mooney was the lone guy, and you knew to double team him because all the other wide receivers were Byron Pringles and scrubs and plumbers, as you would have put it, Ross, just guys who didn't belong on the same field as those guys. So it's huge. And moving back to 9 does not certainly hurt you. We'll talk about the possibilities at 9 very shortly here, but very excited for DJ Moore, and I'm sure Justin Fields is as well. Just a great player to watch, and just what you would want in a number one wide receiver. To your point about maybe drafting another wide receiver, I don't see it at 9, but anything's possible. You would really just have, I think, an even deeper night and day sort of wide receiver room from last year looking at this. And as we move on to free agency, we were excited about Al-Qadim Muhammad, or we're like meh about that. There were just really not many big splash free agency moves right away. And the biggest one that happened, we'd argue, would be Tremaine Edmonds. And I thought last week that after the whole Roquan Smith fiasco and not wanting to sign him to a long-term deal and the big deal that he wanted, that they would not try and go after a big fish like Tremaine Edmonds. But look at Ryan Poles, and he saw something in the Buffalo linebacker, now a Chicago Bear, that was super impressive. Signed him to a 4-year deal, front-loaded, $72 million, $50 million guaranteed. He's 25 years old. He's already been in the league several years. He was a captain at Buffalo. He's getting better in as far as pass defense, but we know he's a hard-hitting guy. We know he's a leader for the locker room right away when he steps in. And, of course, linebacker TJ Edwards, another hometown product, 3-year deal, $19.5 million, 26 years old, coming off his best season in the league from the Eagles, a great addition. So immediately you look at 2 Illinois linebackers, which is just a cool story in itself with Sanborn, TJ Edwards, and then Tremaine Edmonds adding on there. So your front seven is bolstered right away by that. And on the offensive side of the ball, they got Nate Davis to a 3-year deal, 26 years old. Immediately you're starting right guard, you would think, paved the way for Derrick Henry. Just a mean dude on the offensive line who will help out on the interior. And then Andrew Billings, when you look at the defensive line, a 1-year deal for the defensive lineman from the Raiders, 28 years old. He's a big fellow who can stop the run. You shore up defense. And then an edge rusher, DeMarcus Walker, who comes from the Titans on a 3-year deal. He's 28. And that adds a much-needed edge rusher with some experience. And I loved his quote from the press conference earlier when it was like, did Justin Fields play any factor in your signing? He said, absolutely. He wanted to play with this guy, Justin Fields, who's a young star out there. You know, on the heels of David Montgomery leaving, Travis Homer definitely needed that as Montgomery left the Bears for the Lions. It's a 2-year deal from the Seahawks, 24 years old. PJ Walker, second stringer from the Panthers. I'm not mad at that at all after the Bears released Trevor Siemian. And then we just talked about the Tonyan news. It's a lot to digest, Ross. You could lead with Edmonds. Where do you want to go with this? How'd you feel about this free agency class?
Yeah, I mean, I think you got to start with the big fish, right? Which is Tremaine Edmonds. And, a lot of people were saying, well, Ryan Poles maybe contradicted himself. He didn't want to spend $20 million on an off-ball linebacker, but he goes out there and spends big money on Tremaine Edmonds. These guys couldn't be more opposite of each other. And I love Roquan Smith. I think he's a hell of a football player. But Roquan Smith is best when he is going downhill, where he's attacking the line of scrimmage and getting into the backfield. And Roquan Smith is also about 6'1", 235, 240 pounds, depending on where he's listed at. But he was a liability, in pass coverage, and he was an off-ball linebacker. Tremaine Edmonds has already told you today during his press conference, he's going to be the middle linebacker of this team. He's going to be that Mike linebacker. He's going to be essentially what us Bears fans remember back in the Brian Urlacher days, right? When they would run that cover 2 and you would see Brian kind of hover around the line of scrimmage. And then he would dart back down the field and take off about 15, 20 yards and cover that space down the end of the field. And that's what the Bears were looking for. Tremaine Edmonds is 6'5", and he is all of 6'5". He is a much bigger guy than Roquan Smith. He moves a lot faster. He's a lot more athletic linebacker. He's going to be able to clog up a lot of space in the passing game in particular in this defense. And that's what Matt Eberflus wants. He wants to get back to going to cover 2 style defense. A lot of guys that have ran this defense, ex-Bears, have been talking about it on Twitter. If you follow guys like Corey Wooten and Lance Briggs and guys like that, they mentioned this specifically, and that's what Tremaine Edmonds allows to do. He allows Matt Eberflus to get back to his defense. Remember, the length and athleticism is key here. But even some of the stats last year, Tremaine Edmonds, only a 69.9 quarterback rating when he was targeted last year. That is not a very good quarterback rating out there, right? Yards per completion, when he was thrown at 7.6, that's a career best for him. The year before that, he was at 10.8. 65% quarterbacks completed 65% of passes, but everything was underneath him. Everything was in front of him, nothing down the field. We watched this defense last year just get gashed up the middle of the field, 15, 20, 30 yards down the field. That's not going to happen with Tremaine Edmonds. And you think now, how does that help Eddie Jackson? How does that help Jaquan Brisker, who's on the back end, right? Guys like this. How does that help, Kyler Gordon, who's probably going to be a nickel? That's why you spend big money on this guy. He changes the complete complexion of your passing defense. A couple other guys, I think they have gone, kind of bargain hot. I love Edwards coming from Philadelphia. That's your Roquan Smith. That's your guy that's going to attack the football. We saw him last in the Super Bowl. He was the guy that actually tripped up Pat Mahomes on that play where we thought Pat Mahomes might miss the rest of the Super Bowl. That was TJ Edwards right there, right? He's the guy that's going to be really attacking the line of scrimmage and trying to shut down the running game, the screen game, and stuff like that. So I love that linebacking group. I love that, you've got your solid linebackers there. You got them for the cost of essentially what you're going to be paying, Roquan Smith this year, what the Ravens are, because Edmonds' cap hit is only $14 million this year, right? And then they just kind of they're playing this out slowly and methodically, which is okay. They still have the most cap space in the league. There's going to be veteran cuts. There's going to be guys still on the market. There's some guys I like that are still on the market. I think that the Bears could go after the next couple of days, but they're going to slow play this a little bit. And Ryan Poles and Eberflus has a plan right now in place, and they're executing it. I love just, it's a small thing, but I like when your backup quarterback has the same athletic ability within reason, because nobody is as athletic as Justin Fields, but has the same concept or as Justin
Still
Fields.
makes sense in the system for sure.
Absolutely. It makes complete sense. I love the Robert Tonyan signing, right? You need a blocking tight end that's better than Wesco and some of these guys they had last year, right? Tonyan is a touchdown machine. He is very, very familiar with getting in the end zone around the line of scrimmage. We talk when they get in the red zone area. But he's going to be primarily a blocker, which is going to allow Cole Kmet to go out there and catch even more touchdowns this year. So I like these things. It's going to piss off Bears fans. I love letting David Montgomery go. You need more explosiveness at that position. I think that Khalil Herbert is going to be a very solid option, but I will wholeheartedly believe they will address that in the draft, probably around the 4th round pick, and they're going to take an explosive rookie that could be RB1 on day one.
Yeah, a lot to unpack. And going back to Edmonds and and Walker, the defensive players that got signed, those two in particular, said that Marcus Walker said, "quote These guys have done a lot of good things historically. When you look on the wall behind me after the press conference day, I mean, come on now," alluding to the Bears logo. I mean, you get a rush being a defensive player coming here. There's an offensive league nowadays, and when you walk in here, you see, there's Gale Sayers, but you see Brian Urlacher, Mike Singletary, a lot of defensive guys up here. So you go, okay, this is where I want to be. And that's that allure which we missed for several of these past years with the Bears, where they were the bottom of the league and couldn't stop either the run or the pass, not only in the division, but they were being walked all over by the rest of the NFL, it would seem like. So Edmonds, and in this deal, if he's the most expensive guy, he's worth every penny if you're looking from a cap perspective there. Like you said, TJ Edwards loves to play downhill, super athletic, and immediately their run stopping ability seems to get bolstered right away with those guys. When you look at linebacker and then, an edge guy. And I think that most scouts and people around the league would think that the Bears are not done as far as adding in free agency, maybe a defensive lineman or an edge guy. We know Yannick Ngakoue is still out there and a couple other names as guys are getting signed right away. Chris Wormley too. And that, a miss, I suppose, would be you thought maybe Orlando Brown Jr. would go to the Bears, but that turned out to be not in the cards, and he went to the Bengals to protect Joe Burrow. So now it just looks like, as far as that's concerned, Braxton Jones, I know Ryan Poles said that he is the starting left tackle, and you're looking at the line as Braxton Jones, Tevin Jenkins, Cody Whitehair, Nate Davis, and maybe a first-round rookie or someone else, because you saw Riley Reif is gone. You're going to need that right tackle, and I'm not sure who it comes to with that first overall pick now, Ross.
Yeah, it's, right now, I think that, if you're a betting person, you probably would, the odds would be favored to bet on Paris Johnson right now. But I think also don't sleep on Broderick Jones, who's the tackle out of Georgia right now. They were at Georgia's pro day. A lot of people think that they were probably there to see Jalen Carter or Nolan Smith. I think they were there to see Broderick Jones, and I think that they might take him 9th overall. But they also could trade back a little bit and recoup some draft picks and still take him in the middle of the first round. So I think that's a guy that you wouldn't sleep on. And listen, the Bears are still going to add an offensive lineman or two in this free agency. Keep an eye out for Isaac Seumalo right now. I think he's a guy that he hasn't been signed. He's a guard that's from the Eagles. All right. We always know how good that Eagles offensive line has been over the last couple of years. The guy's been in the league for 7 years now. But I think he is a very strong interior option as they maybe look to kick Cody Whitehair back to center. And I think you could see him slide into that left guard spot. And Tevin Jenkins might be your right tackle or might compete for that spot, right? As you look at now, it sounds like Nate Davis is going to play the right guard spot. And then other guys on there, you talked about Yannick Ngakoue. I think he's a good fit for the Bears, as he's probably going to take a visit with them pretty soon. Jadeveon Clowney got released today. He's a solid option as a guy that you can start opposite a rookie if you want to go that route in the draft. And then at corner, the other guy I would keep an eye on is Rock Ya-Sin, who played for the Raiders last year. It's only been in the league 4 years, but this is a second round pick. Guy has played in that Colts system before last year, so he is very familiar with Matt Eberflus in that system. I think that you can see Rock Ya-Sin get signed by the Bears within the next couple of days. So I think that's a guy that we're going to be talking about by next week. Will be on the Bears here, but keep an eye on those two names: Isaac Seumalo, Rock Ya-Sin. I think those are two guys that the Bears could sign within the next couple of days, and then I think they're going to for sure add in a veteran edge rusher.
I'm not terribly worried with that line, how it's compiled right now, is having 4 out of the 5 spots. And with the versatility that Tevin Jenkins has shown to be able to play guard or be moved to right tackle, that's huge. And he was, on the heels of his offseason where in training camp where it looked like he might be traded and not fitting with the Bears. He played a great season for that Bears offensive line. He was one of the bright spots for sure. And if Whitehair and company could be healthy, that will be huge. I'm curious to see, you mentioned all those players who are still on the radar. If Ngakoue could be signed on the cheap, Rock Ya-Sin, and really that will still dictate what you would think the Bears do with that 9th overall pick, because I really do like Skoronski and Broderick Jones, the guys you mentioned, but then, there's a chance Miles Murphy might be there, or Christian Gonzalez, the cornerback from Oregon. And it's going to be basically a best player available scenario, you would think, based on the needs of the Bears at that point. But I would certainly not be mad if it came to, Skoronski, Jones, or the kid from Ohio State that we talked about.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. But, you got options. So I know, listen, everybody wants everything all at once, especially with the free agency. And so by day 1, everybody got excited. And then by day 2, everybody was like, this is a long, methodical process. And it's important to note that yesterday, was the first day that, as now, the teams can legally sign these players. So their tampering period is over. This is also the first time that these players can go visit facilities now. And this is very important for a lot of veteran players. They need to go to the facility. They need to feel it out. They need to hear it in person. They want to, hear what the front office has to say, if it's a good fit for their family, things of that nature. I think these are the things that a lot of people forget when, you just think it's just monopoly money. You're just throwing stuff at guys. You're making a phone call like it's Jerry Maguire is saying, hey, throw this contract out there. A lot of these guys, it gets really personal for them. If you're a guy like Jadeveon Clowney, you've been in this league for a while now, you've been on multiple teams, you for damn sure are going to take a couple visits around the NFL and see where you're more comfortable, right? And same thing with a guy like a Rock Ya-Sin, who he thought maybe he might be in Vegas for a while after leaving the Colts, and all of a sudden he finds himself looking for another team, right? So you know that this is going to take a little bit more time. So this second wave definitely lasts a lot longer, usually in the next couple weeks. And I think that this is where the Bears are going to stockpile a lot of depth pieces, and they're still going to add anywhere between 3 to 4 more starters.
So you talked about, David Montgomery leaving briefly. As far as the departures go, it's only been him and Riley Reif. And I liked your point about Tunyon. It was pointed out in the comments there that he's a great pass blocker as well. Mm-hmm. And then Travis Homer said he prides himself as a pass blocker as well. Mm-hmm. Montgomery, good for him going to get that money, because that's a big contract as far as a running back's concerned. And it's here today, gone tomorrow. It makes a lot of sense for him. Do you see the Bears addressing it? Are they happy with Homer and Khalil Herbert at this point, or do you want to see them add to that?
I'd like to see them add to that. I'd like to see them add one more veteran in the mix, and then continue to add a guy in the draft as well. So I'm looking at I'm trying to pull up some names here really quick of guys that are available. I know some people threw out there like Kareem Hunt to me earlier. I don't think that that's quite a fit. But you can look at a guy like a Jerick McKinnon or something like that, something like that. Somebody on the lower end that's going to be able to kind of jump into that running back by committee. But I think your number one running back going into next year is going to be a rookie. And this is kind of what the good teams, do. Remember, we just came off of a Super Bowl that saw Isaiah Pacheco, a 7th round pick, He didn't dominate the Super Bowl, but he was really close to it. He had a
Yeah.
fantastic Super Bowl. He could have been in the running for Super Bowl MVP, right? And then you look at what the Philadelphia Eagles did on the opposite side of the ball, right? Miles Sanders, who left their team a couple of days ago, he was a non-factor really in the Super Bowl. It was a lot of Gainwell and Boston Scott, and they just go with that three-headed rotation. And I think when you have an athlete as dynamic as Justin Fields already, who's going to impact the rushing game with his ability, there's no reason for you to spend a ton of money, although I did want to Saquon Barkley, or spend a ton of resources on a running back. You can find these explosive guys in the draft. And I think that was a problem ultimately with David Montgomery. Is he's a nice player, he's a good guy. We all love him. We wish him nothing but success, except when he is playing the Bears twice a year. He just lacked that explosiveness that the Bears wanted. He didn't have that breakaway speed, and the advanced analytics and stats are not kind to him at all. The more touches he gets as the game goes along, actually, the worse he gets. And you best believe the Bears have a strong enough analytics department where they saw that as well, where this guy is not as effective when he's on the field, predominantly in the third and fourth quarter of football games.
Takes a big toll on you, and he struggled with some injury history as well with the Bears. But I mean, no one was better at breaking tackles for sure. So it's the negative side. You're going to see him twice against Detroit. He'll run pretty hard against his former team. Circling back to polls, I know you don't like to give grades, but it feels like a home run. It certainly feels like an A grade if you were to give grades as far as filling needs and starting using all this cap space to really seem to turn this team around. The conversation going into this offseason was just get more competitive. And this is a team that the narrative is like, oh, they'll, instead of losing 12 games, they'll lose 8, be a 500 team. It seems to me that you could turn this around pretty quickly. What are your thoughts, Ross?
I mean, it could. You look at around now in the NFC North, it's basically a foregone conclusion that Aaron Rodgers is gone, right? He'll be a Jet hopefully by week 1, because this keeps dragging out more and more. And you look at within the division, and to me right now, actually the Lions are probably the best team in the division right now. I think they've got a solid football team
in the division.
Yeah, the Vikings are kind of treading water. They're trying to see if they can keep some vets, lose some vets. What's going to happen with Dalvin Cook, and what's going to happen with Zadarius Smith, who put on Twitter he was out of there, but he's still on the football team right now. But the Bears could theoretically compete this year, because you look around and it's a quarterback league, and this all will rest on the shoulders of Justin Fields, and he's got an ability next season to put himself into the upper echelon of NFC quarterbacks. If you were to tell me right now who's the best NFC quarterback, I mean, it's tough. Is it Kirk Cousins? Is it Matthew Stafford with his concussion situation? Like there's not, Kyler Murray is going to be out for at least half the year right now with his ACL situation. Is it Geno Smith? I mean, there's not a lot of names out there that are going to really, obviously we probably put Jalen Hurts up there right now as the number one guy. So, there's opportunity for Justin Fields to put himself out there, make himself a better quarterback, and, put himself into that top 2, top 3 situation of best quarterback in the NFC. And if he does that, why can't the Bears, go 7-9 or even, have an 8-7 record or something like that and compete for a playoff spot?
I don't see why not. It's going to be tough based on the yeah. It's going to be tough. Those extra games will get you. It's going to be tough for the Bears, especially with the way that the Lions look like they've turned the corner, turned things around. But the departure of Aaron Rodgers is huge. The Vikings, it'll make or break their season with Kirk Cousins, and we know how inconsistent he is. It looks like, and everybody's been holding their breath and saying this is they might have that best quarterback in the NFC North when the season begins. So it's pretty insane to think about that. Going forward, what do we miss about the Bears, Ross? Anything else?
No, I think that's it. I think that it was good for, it was good for polls to get up there today. I mean, listen, they got DJ Moore and they got 2 first-round picks. And that to me, that was a big enough win already. When you get a possible number 1 wide receiver, and then you still allow yourself to still be in the top 10 of that draft, and then get that team's first-round pick next year, the Panthers might stink next year. And that's a thing that we're not talking about enough, although I like what they're doing in free agency. They're adding some pieces and stuff like that. But when have we ever seen rookie quarterbacks come out and just light it on fire right away, right? And so they might be a bad football team next year, which means the Bears could be having their top 10, pick in the draft again. So
Absolutely.
that right there enough was a home run. This is a 2 to 3 year rebuild. We are going into year technically last year was the strip down, so technically you can call this year one. But the fact that they're able to add DJ Moore and Tremaine Edmonds to that team, to me, is enough of a win right there. And now let's see what he can do. And with adding some more pieces, adding some more depth guys, adding about 3 to 4 more starters on this team. And that's it. And from there, we just got to make sure that everybody stays healthy. That's also the most important factor in football, of course. And
Of course, health is paramount.
Wait, we got breaking news. The Bears just signed Dante Foreman, former running back from the Carolina Panthers. So that just went through right now. That is a 1 year, $3 million deal that Adam Schefter has just broken on Twitter. So Bears just signed another running back to the mix. Dante Foreman is there.
Bears loving these the dealings with the Panthers, and that fills a need, like you said, Ross. So it'll be a competition as far as running back is concerned. And then you'd think they would draft someone late as well in the draft. So that's impressive. And that going back to the Panthers side of things, I have no idea who their number one quarterback is. We know who they'll be drafting, but historically, that number one overall pick, whoever has it, has a good chance to repeat, except they won't have it. And the Bears could pick in the top 10 again and add to their already looks like a good rebuild. So that's impressive. Looking at the rest of free agency, there's been a ton on the move. We've talked about potential free agents. It's really getting pretty thin for the Bears at this point. We talked about Orlando Brown, targets like that. The quarterbacks got signed right away. Jason Kelsey coming back, and certain certain players that you thought might leave came right back, like Darius Slay for the Eagles, Jordan Poyer for the Bills. What else stood out to you as far as free agency outside of the Bears, Ross?
I think the biggest one to me was right off the bat was McGlinchey. I think we all thought that McGlinchey was going to be, and Mike McGlinchey was going to be a Chicago Bear. And I think that the Bears were probably very competitive on that market, but the Broncos stepped in last minute and they offered a deal that, quite frankly, McGlinchey couldn't refuse. And so I think that was a big one to me. That was a surprise. I mean, they're giving this guy 5 years, $87.5 million, $17.5 million a year to play right tackle. That's some heavy coin right there, And Javon Hargrave, he went from a one damn good football team to another damn good football team, he went from Philadelphia to San Francisco. Rich kept getting richer. The San Francisco 49ers continue to just stockpile talent on their defenses. That was very surprising to me. The Orlando Brown thing was surprising. I think that's a great move for the Bengals because he fits their system very well. He's going to, Joe Burrow desperately needs protection really bad there. And I think they were able to beef up that offensive line. That was, very huge. And then, I feel like we have to talk about this Jets situation. They're signing, they're basically getting bent over right now by Aaron Rodgers. I mean, they came into this to me with already a decent amount of weapons and stuff like that. And then all of a sudden, Aaron Rodgers is essentially forcing them to sign Allen Lazard. He's a nice player, but Allen Lazard for 4 years and $44 million, that's $11 million a year. And you hear that Randall Cobb is coming in and they might dust off the corpse of Jordy Nelson or something like that and sign him now. I mean,
joke's been Donald Driver.
Yeah, Donald Driver is another good one. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're just getting bent over by this guy right now who he theoretically he's not even on your team yet. So the Jets obviously are all in. So that's going to be very interesting.
It's just I obviously overshadowing everything we've talked about, Derek Carr on the move. That's interesting. And we didn't talk about Jimmy Garoppolo going to Vegas, and then Darren Waller, also a big move after he married Kelsey Plum, who plays for Las Vegas's basketball team. Then he gets shipped off to the Giants, which is unfortunate. But it adds to Daniel Jones' weapons between him, Waller, and Saquon Barkley is pretty impressive. And then we'll see what Jimmy G can do in Las Vegas. But the big headline, of course, it's been just nauseating, just this whole saga of Aaron Rodgers. And these rumors to the Jets have gone on for days. And he came on Pat McAfee's show and said he wanted to go to the Jets as of Friday. This is all on the heels of the darkness retreat, and said he was 90% ready to retire. And we know about his emotional leaving the field of his last game, and we wondered if we were going to see Aaron Rodgers not only in a Green Bay uniform, but even come back again next year. And he said himself 90% ready to retire. And then he just turns around and says, yeah, I could go to the Jets, but here's what we need. And now you can't forget about Green Bay is going to want something in return for letting Aaron Rodgers go at this point. It's been rumored that a first round pick, and then, more picks to come, but that's a huge void to be filled up. I mean, Jordan Love be damned. It would be a pretty big shift. And then you'd think the Jets would be peaking at the right time with a lot of young talent around them. I don't know if it'll be finalized in a week or a month or what's going to happen with it, but I'd certainly be happy to see him leave the division, as I know a lot of Bears fans would be as well.
Yeah, a lot of Packers fans are at this point too, and you see why. I mean, he's just been a complete diva the whole time. I'm tired of the Pat McAfee fake Howard Stern, style shows and interviews, and going into the darkness and silence, and this is just a lot of pomp and circumstance for a guy, quite frankly, who, yes, he's going to be a Hall of Famer. He's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. We know he's got the stats and the MVP trophies, but he's only won one ring. And for everything that he has accomplished, it still has only been one ring up in Green Bay, where, and you start to really question, what kind of teammate is this guy, and what kind of camaraderie is he going to build when he gets to the Jets, and is he going to show up to OTAs, and is he going to show up to minicamp on time? Can he commit to doing this next year? Because that's a tough division, and it might not all click or come together in the first year. And what if he just says, "All right, cool, I'm out. I'm going to retire," and the Jets are stuck between a rock and a hard place again? So, yeah, I think the whole NFL world is just completely exhausted by the Aaron Rodgers experience, and we want it over. And quite frankly, I kind of like what the Giants did across town. They've been quietly making some good moves. We didn't even talk about the Darren Waller move that they did there, and so the Jets are doing all this. I think the Giants might still be the best team in the New York area. They're able to retain Barkley and kind of beef up that. They signed Paris Campbell today, beef up that offense a little bit. Daniel Jones' contract is super scary, but hey, we're definitely all exhausted with the Aaron Rodgers experience at this point.
It's exhausting, and obviously, we're a little biased with the Bears side of things, but it's just his indecision, the back and forth with all this, and let's not forget that he's 39. So to go and flip to a division that has the Patriots, the Dolphins, and the Buffalo Bills, who are the cream of the crop, you would think at this point with Josh Allen, and of course the Dolphins are no slouch, having really turned it around last year. We know what Belichick can do. It's just as competitive, and it's going to take a lot of time, I feel like, to adjust like that, which is why, to Aaron Rodgers' point, wanting Alan Lazard to that 4-year deal and wanting Randall Cobb, he wants guys who he's familiar with, like security blankets, in addition to the new skill position players that he'd be playing with. I'm ready for him to just make a decision at this point. And so what does that mean for Green Bay? Do you think that they'll have the quote worst quarterback going forward in the division? Like, what are your expectations for Jordan Love?
I mean, you got to power rank him, fourth right now, right? I mean, but I don't commend Green Bay, because I think they should have pulled the plug on this a year ago, and not even, kind of bent over for Rodgers and acquiesced and gave him that big deal. Obviously, he just, it seemed like both sides didn't want to be there. But, look at Jordan Love. This guy has attempted 83 career passes, and he's about to be, he's about to be 25 years old soon. And you're going to have to make a decision on him, most importantly, on that 5th-year option pretty soon. So they needed to do this right now. Jordan Love, in these short times that we have seen him out on the football field, he looks very raw. He looks very not comfortable in the pocket. His feet are very happy back there, and he looks like he wants to get rid of the football pretty quickly. So I think the Packers are going to be in for a rude awakening. They're going to have to go through this. Listen, they have been blessed for a long time from going from Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers, they are beyond due to struggle for a little bit. And I think this one could, theoretically set them back, a good, 8 to 9 years, as we've seen obviously in Chicago. Not having a quarterback, it will push you back. So don't be surprised if this, might cost Matt LaFleur his job long term, and they got to clean house and just blow this whole thing up. But that's football, and this is what happens where you kind of acquiesce to a superstar who doesn't want to be there anymore, doesn't like you, you don't like him either, and you keep it on for a year or two too long, and this is what happens. So I don't feel any bad about them. It's going to be a lot easier for us to go to Lambeau Field and get some tickets up there, and hopefully
right.
the Bears will start whooping their ass soon, because it's been far time that the Bears turn this around and start being the more dominant team in this quote unquote rivalry.
Well, yeah, the oldest rival, one of the oldest rivalries in sports, right? And it looks, if you look at the all-time records, they're about even at this point. But we know from the past, from 15 years of Aaron Rodgers, he's had their number over and over again. So from that perspective, the table's got to turn at some point there. So Jordan Love be damned and Aaron Rodgers, it is not a done deal. They have to work out this deal between the Packers and the Jets, as it's been pointed out repeatedly. But Aaron Rodgers on the move would certainly make waves in that division. Moving on, Ross, talk about March Madness. How about it? As it's going on right now, let's talk about it, brother. And some brackets busted already. Go ahead.
Some brackets been busted. Princeton took out Arizona this afternoon. I had Fordham, whatever.
Joe Biden had Arizona.
Yes, he did. Of course he did. I actually picked whatever that team is, Folsom, whatever that team is. I don't know. I picked them today in a parlay. Furman, there you go. I picked them today in a parlay, and they won, so I feel good about that. Duke right now is in front of my TV. They're blowing out Oral Roberts 28-10. But the first weekend is always, some of the most exciting. RIP Illinois. They took a bad loss today. Northwestern's on right now. They're beating Boise State by 2 points. But yeah, this is one of the most fun weekends of the year, where you just kind of kick back and you get just uninterrupted basketball for hours upon hours, and the upsets are always exciting and stuff like that. And I don't fill out a bracket anymore, but I do like to kind of dabble a little bit in some parlays here and there, and this will take us through the next couple of weeks, kind of this kind of dry spell in sports, and will bring us right to that baseball season and kind of the home stretch of the NBA. But it's fun when that kid hit that shot today for Furman, excuse me. I was in my office, and everybody just exploded at the same time. It was absolutely bonkers. It was nuts, and that's what it's all about. It's so exciting.
It was 5 years since Virginia's lost to UMBC as well to the day, which is pretty unbelievable. Mm-hmm. We gotta double back. You don't fill out a bracket anymore? What does that mean?
I don't fill out a bracket anymore. I mean, I don't know. You fill out a bracket, it gets blown up in like the first 3 hours or so. You get upset. I haven't watched enough college basketball all year to feel like I can intelligently fill out a bracket. So I probably do like 2 or 3 parlays a day. I got a parlay right now that's looking good. And then I'll make another little $15 parlay tomorrow, and hope that one makes another $100. And that's how I like to play it these days. The online gambling stuff and the apps and stuff like that have kind of taken the fun away from me from brackets and whatnot.
Yeah, that's a fair enough point. I mean, to that end, people with no knowledge of college basketball have gone pretty deep just because of betting by mascots, for God's sakes, and shit like that. So. But if you look at the number 1 seeds, certainly Alabama came out swinging, 96-75 win against Texas A&M, CC, which I didn't know existed until then, and then Kansas, who's another favorite, beating the tar out of Howard with Kamala Harris in the building. As far as you didn't fill out a bracket, but you must have a favorite. I really do like Kansas coming out of this on top. I know it's pretty unheard of to go back to a title game, but they've everyone's favorite Dick out there, and he's really making all these big time shots, and he's a young scorer, and Grady Dick and Bill Self. There's a lot to be said for the coaching there, but I would love to see a Alabama Kansas final. But on the note of Kansas, making their run, they got to go through a young Arkansas team that has a lot of blue chip prospects. And it was a closer, tighter game against Illinois, who put up a little bit of fight at the end, but don't look past Arkansas if you're Kansas, because the Razorbacks are super impressive right now.
Yeah, I will say what's missing, from the game, from the tournament is, you start to lack this big star power that we used to get when I grew up. And I can remember the Vince Carter days and Grant Hill. And I could take it all the way to, even like Zion Williamson from a couple years ago and stuff like that. And it sucks to not have a guy like Victor Wembanyama, who's obviously going to be the number 1 overall pick in the draft, right? He's playing overseas right now. And even not having a guy like Scoot Henderson, who's probably going to be the number 2 pick in the draft, and he played in the G League this year. And so I don't ever want to tell a young man, I'm gonna get on my soapbox for a minute. I don't ever want to tell a young man that he can't go to work right away or anything like that. But I think that the NBA should adopt, in college basketball, should adopt a similar rule that that the NFL has, and that college, baseball has too. Probably more closer to baseball, which is if you're 17 years old and you want to go to the NBA right out of high school, like a baseball player, you should go right away. You should have that opportunity to go right away. But if you go to college, in my opinion, I think that you should commit to that college for 2 years. And I think that it will help both sports and both leagues. Imagine some of these young guys being able to stay in college for 2 years and grow that sport, work on their game, and then go to the NBA. But if you are one of those generational guys, if you are Kobe Bryant, or Kevin Garnett, or something along those lines, and you feel like you can go right away, God bless you. Go for it. So I think that should be a fair compromise in the next CBA.
Yeah, and you're already seeing it, right, with what's happening in the G League, and overtime elite is a new wrinkle in the system too. There's a couple lottery pick players that could be picked who are playing there in the top 5, but you can't forget that there are guys, like we mentioned, who are out there, as in Brandon Miller from Alabama, and we saw Nick Smith Jr. putting on a show for Arkansas. So there's some, but really that's not what March Madness is about, right? There is about these teams that have played together for the majority, besides the Kentuckys of the world or Dukes, who are one and done, a lot of one and done players. But with this new wrinkle in there, it kind of weeds out those players. So you'll see which team can play the most cohesive basketball with some mix of youth and some good leadership. But do you have a favorite, Ross, out of we've mentioned? I don't have any faith in Purdue, but who do you like?
Yeah, I mean, you said it earlier. I like Kansas a lot, but I like Alabama too. And I think Kansas is probably the most complete team. I think Alabama has the best player in college basketball right now. Obviously, we'll take all the off-court stuff, off the table there. But I think they have the best player in college basketball. So I think it should be one of those 2 teams that will win the title. And, Bill Self being back out there. Bill Self has obviously been a legend in this sport now. I think a lot of people from Illinois really can't stand him at this point, but they've got an outstanding basketball team. And he's been able to, recruit and keep these teams together, even during the whole one and done, saga and stuff like that.
Yeah, no question. Well, moving on to other headlines, it looks like Michael Jordan might be in talks to sell his stake in the Hornets. I feel like it is long overdue. He's not just run that franchise into the ground. I feel like it's just not worked out for Mike. And then, of course, from the Bulls' perspective, Lonzo Ball going through with that surgery that would potentially cost him the entire next season, which is just bananas. They said, in 14 months he'll undergo it, which is just crazy. The cartilage transplant. Did you know what a cartilage transplant was?
I did not. I'm wondering whose cartilage he's getting that from. So that's interesting. But
hopefully it's some fine cartilage.
It is. Prayers out to Lonzo Ball. I'm pretty sure mentally right now he's got to be struggling with this. The guy wants to get out on the basketball court and compete. That's what he's been doing his entire life, and he hasn't been able to do it. It sucks. Even going back to Michael, that's the right thing for him. I think Michael at this point has got more money than he can spend. He's got, beautiful wife. He's got kids. He got grandkids. That man just needs to go off into the sunset. And he's not old by any stretch of the imagination, but he's at a point right now where I think that he should just, sit back and let the Jordan money come in and pass on to his kids and just, take that bottle of tequila that he owns, that brand, and sit somewhere and relax underneath the sun, man. You don't need to be doing this anymore. And put the Charlotte Hornets in somebody that actually cares about doing the day-to-day stuff, because it's clear that Michael doesn't care about that. And then there's no harm in that. There's nothing wrong with that at all. Just sell the basketball team.
Yeah. It seems like the writing has been on the wall for some time, and he'd rather be fishing or golfing or whatever he's doing out in Florida, anywhere else. And he can go be at the wedding of Larsa Pippen and Marcus Jordan at some point soon. So it'll be a hell of an affair. And maybe Scotty will be there. I don't know. It's something we never fucking talked about. What a weird pairing that you would not have expected. And I'm sure Michael is laughing about this still.
It's probably his idea.
Yeah, probably. Hey, what if this happened? Ross, R.I.P. Bobby Caldwell. Great hits. Some of the best samples in hip hop. We know the Light sampled him, and What You Won't Do for Love, Tupac. Like there's just endless hits. Yeah, for sure. He was a white singer, soul singer, who a lot mistaken him to be black. And it was funny to talk about that first album he put out, and it's him in the Shadows, and that was that was picked by him. But man could sing, and such a great voice. Outstanding.
Amazing voice. He is my go-to. He is his music is played at least one time a week in this household. It's great, dinner music, company, cleaning up, just an amazing voice. I always called him and Tina Marie the king and queen of they're not black. That whole thing, right? And so he's going to be missed. It was great to see that he was struggling with illness, but it was great to see that he was able to pass away peacefully at home, surrounded by his family. And if you have never ever streamed or listened to Bobby Caldwell music, do yourselves a favor and fix that this weekend. It is absolutely a treat. And all you have to do is just type in his name and just put on Bobby Caldwell radio, and you'll get introduced to another ton of great artists from that era that are still with us as well. And you got to appreciate those people while they're around, and then also celebrate them still when they're gone, and let their music still live on when they're gone. R.I.P. Bobby Caldwell. Love his music. I will continue to play it, and hopefully I can pass that on to my son, and he can continue as well.
I don't think he will.
Listen. I
don't know who the Beatles are.
I didn't get introduced. I got introduced to it because my mother did the same thing, So you never know.
That's the only way to learn is through you. It was funny. Just listening. I forget which podcast I was listening to earlier, but it was like, Dad, do you know who Tool is or know who this is? Like, yeah, I fucking went to college and listened to Tool or System of a Down, and I know who they are. I can not imagine what the music landscape will look like when Bradley is in his teens, and Lily, my daughter, what that's like. It's going to be interesting. Maybe the two who just who are going on tour, who just were making headlines today, Drake and 21 Savage, will still be around. But those tickets, man, it's again with Beyonce and with Taylor Swift and all these big name artists, it's just nuts when you look at Ticketmaster and just say, nope, like I'm just not going to do it. Did you even, you must have looked, Ross. I know you're a Drake guy. Did you consider it? And
I
it's
did
just
not.
Much.
Yeah, I'm at an age right now where that crowd and that concert is a little too young for me. I saw Drake in concert a couple years ago. We went to Kansas City to see him. My lovely wife, April, was pregnant at the time. There was weed all over us. I was yelling at kids. I was just I'm way too old to be at this concert. I enjoyed it. But listen, these concerts now with these big artists, I'm trying to tell people this is the new luxury brand. Like this is the new luxury item on the market. It's like similar to buying a Chanel purse, something like that. When Beyonce or Taylor Swift or Rihanna, when she's done having kids, and Drake, when these big artists are going to go on tour now, these tickets are going to run you $1,000 plus. This is the new luxury item, because what they're going to try and do, my conspiracy theory is they also want you to embrace more of the in-home experience, which is also helping the artists and other people, right? You can throw on goggles now and you can go into a concert in the metaverse and you can have the concert. Or I watched the Kendrick Lamar tour on Amazon. which it looks beautiful. It sounded great in my house. I got Sonos speakers. It sounds great. The Weeknd just did his concert on HBO. It's streaming on HBO Max right now. So this is where we're going. If you want to see these people in person, you're going to have to pay a premium. But if not, we're going to give you a very good experience in a home that's going to be, it's not being there, but it's pretty close. If you can cut off the lights and grab yourself a beverage at home and you got a good sound system, and that's where we're going. And I don't mind it. It is what it is. If you want to see Beyonce or Bad Bunny, it's going to cost you. And I think it's also a perfect opportunity for people to start to embrace some of these smaller acts that they might like, and some of these other groups that are still playing at these smaller venues, House of Blues, the Vic that we have here, other places and stuff like that, and also embrace local groups and local bands. Remember, you could have saw 10 years ago, 15 years ago, you could have saw Drake for $35.99. You can see some of these artists. I remember seeing Kanye West once, like for really, really small theater for free. So
I saw him for free. Yeah. I saw him
Yeah.
for free outside the Soldier Field parking lot, and
Absolutely.
Twista was there, and Ludacris, and
Absolutely.
it was right, around that college dropout time. But
Absolutely.
yeah, it's as Cliff pointed out, like $1,000 to see a concert is just bananas, and everything we talked about. I guess you're selling the experience, and nothing will replace that experience. It just comes to how much can you tolerate, because you get aged out of it to an extent too. If you can drop that sort of money to be real close front row and you get a decent enough deal, then yeah, you check that off your bucket list and see, an icon. But just, I'm not that impressed with what Drake and 21 Savage do together too. Like Drake by himself probably warrants that, but to pay $1,000 to see 21 Savage, one of these more well-known fucking mumble rappers, I don't get it. And I know the two have done a lot of work together, but it's just insane. And I know, Ross, you had that question. What's the best concert you've ever seen?
Yeah.
And that's loaded. You just talked about all these venues in Chicago that are great. Like I saw the Strokes at the Aragon, and I saw Kanye at the United Center, and that's who you would want to see at the United Center, is those bigger names like that. But we're blessed to have a lot of venues like that, like the Riv and Aragon, and the Vic, Riviera, the Metro.
Me and you went to a Kanye West concert in Vegas, which was great. But then we went to somewhere else after that, and we saw J. Cole do an impromptu 30-minute set in jogging pants, and which was just phenomenal, right? Like that was something that stuck in my mind for a long time. My favorite concert experience was 1998, was the Hard Knock Life tour. That was basically all of Def Jam at the time. Jay-Z was the lead on that, also DMX, but you had DJ Clue and Ja Rule, and you just had any big hip hop artist that was on Def Jam at that moment was doing that concert. And those are things that you don't ever see anymore. Is you'll never see the 5-6 biggest names, all go on a tour together for 56 dates, right? They're too big. They do their own stuff. They'll pop up at a festival with each other. J. Cole and Drake are doing a festival with each other, but they'll never do it too big. Also, from another standpoint, my wife and I went to go see Usher. Usher is one of our favorite artists. We went to go see him in Vegas a couple years ago. So much so we loved it that we're going back again in October. So yeah, I can't wait for that.
Yeah, those are some big names, and talk about that. When I saw Kanye at the United Center, he had that floating stage, and whatever you think of him, still just a hell of a performer. And what he put as far as a performer into set design and everything else was incredible. I almost caught his jacket at that show. A little weird fact about that too, which was pretty crazy. But I've seen Black Keys a bunch of times, and all the big names you could think of, like Neil Young at the Chicago Theater, yeah, outstanding. But Ross, with the final note with the Oscars, everything, everywhere, all at once. I still haven't seen it, but I'm gonna watch it soon, and it's cleaned up, and it was the favorite, the belle of the ball, and then the really only outlier you felt like was Brendan Fraser winning for Best Actor, which looked like a shoe-in too. What were the other surprises? I know some movies get shut out, but when there's something like Everything Everywhere All at Once, that comes along once in a while, it's hard to beat out. It's hard to beat the competition at that point.
It is, and it was just a movie that really resonated with everybody, and I see why. When I first time I watched it, I absolutely loved the movie. I've seen it twice now, so definitely check it out. Watch it, and it was great to see Michelle Yeoh get her first Oscar and Jamie Lee Curtis get her first Oscar, and Kiwi Kong, his speech was absolutely amazing as well. So it's great. I think it's going to be something that we're going to remember for a long time. It's basically the first sci-fi movie, excuse me, that's been that's been recognized, and it's fun. It's a fun movie. If you have not watched it yet, it's a good opportunity to definitely check it out now.
No question. We have run out of time. Jimmy Fallon did a good job, or Jimmy Fallon, the other Jimmy Kimmel did a good job, I think,
yeah.
of that too. Yeah, it came and went, the champagne carpet and all. It was as expected, but we've run out of time. Coming up next with the Barroom Network, you got open mic at 8 p.m. The Barflies express their thoughts on the Bears and most recent signings, and they keep having these signings come in day after day with Dante Foreman, the most recent one, adding to the running back depth. Remember to follow us on Twitter. Follow me at The Real Evan Mac. Follow Ross at Ross Reed. Been streaming on YouTube. You could check this episode out if you've missed any of it. After the show is done, it will be on the Barroom Network's channel. And if you're looking for the audio-only version, it will be on Spotify, iTunes. Like, subscribe, tell a friend or two. Enjoy the madness. We'll be back same time next week, recapping that and more. Everybody be good to each other out there. So long.
Peace.